Well, if you ever thought that United Church people weren't anything like the first disciples of Jesus, I refer to you this passage from the Gospel of John. Some Gentiles went to Philip and told him that they would like to see Jesus. Philip consulted with Andrew, and then the two of them went to consult with Jesus. If that is not a model for a committee structure, I don't know what is. So Jesus tells those two what's on his mind, and it's a lot. He's struggling with his next moves during this Passover season, now that he's a person of interest, since so many people like him and think that maybe he's the one to lead a rebellion and get them out from underneath the thumb of Rome. The authorities are suspicious, and he knows it. And so he puts his struggle into a first-century botany lesson. Unless the grain of wheat that has fallen into the earth would die, it remains alone. But if it would die, it bears much fruit. The purpose of a seed, generally speaking, is to not be a seed for long. Its purpose, given the right conditions, is to open up and allow the potential within it to flourish. The seed is to be no longer a seed, but to become unrecognizable as such, to become root and stem and flower and fruit, within which is seed again. The seed's purpose, if grain or vegetable, is to feed others. If a flower, to become a thing of beauty, a source of medicine and life for small things. Seeds brought us our breakfast. Seeds, by their inspiration, brought us Van Gogh's sunflowers, Tchaikovsky's Waltz of the Flowers, and Wordsworth's daffodils. I wandered lonely as a cloud, remember? And Joyce Kilmer's I Think That I Shall Never See, a poem as lovely as a tree. We would not have these things were it not for seeds. Our food, the grasses that hold back erosion, beauty, the arts, so much of life begins with a seed that has been nourished by nature or cultivation and has done what it is meant to do, break open and become its fullest potential, which involves not being a seed anymore. The animated film, How to Train Your Dragon, was a story about a Viking village called Burke, where all the Vikings seem to have Scottish accents. Stoic is the chief, and Hiccup is his son, who locates the village Burke thus. It is 12 days north of hopeless and a few degrees south of freezing to death. It is located solidly on the meridian of misery. We've got hunting, fishing, and a charming view of the sunsets. The only problems are the pests. Most places have mice or mosquitoes. We have dragons. Hunting and killing dragons was considered accomplishment, the subject of songs and sagas, and the passage to, well, manhood in particular. In the first movie, Hiccup, the gentle, misfit chief's son, secretly gets to know a dragon named Toothless, and eventually educates his people in the nature of dragons, that they are actually wonderful creatures, not to be feared, but to be nurtured and engaged with respect. Wild, but tameable, kind of like horses. And the new sport in Burke becomes dragon riding instead of dragon killing. So How to Train Your Dragon 2 continues the story and was nominated this year for Best Animated Film. In this story, Hiccup discovers another accomplished dragon rider who turns out to be the Jane Goodall of dragons and his mother, whom he had assumed was dead. He realizes that his love and understanding of dragons as part of the great web of life is come by honestly. His mother's work appeals to him, and he realizes that. He realizes also that he does not want to become the chief of Burke, like his father, responsible for the well-being and administration of a village. He wants to work with dragons. Enter the nasty pirate dragon abductor, his evil boss with the great hungry alpha dragon, and you know there is going to be a battle to save the dragons and the village. In the midst of it all, Hiccup has to make a decision about his place in the world. He is so different from his stereotypically big hairy beast Viking father. He likes being a dragon rider. It brings him joy. Will he have to give up his joy to be a leader? Will that call for a complete and miserable sacrifice? Or is there a leader within the dragon rider? Has his intimate knowledge of dragons led him to a completely different future, or can it serve him in the role that is expected of him? Unless the grain of wheat that has fallen into the earth would die, it remains alone. But if it would die, it bears much fruit. At the Walford Bible study this week, our elder theologians considered what it would have meant to remain one age forever, like 13. They decided that they would not wish to have remained 13 forever, or even 29, or even 39. They saw the seeds of their lives break open time and time again. They reflected on the seasons of growth within their decisions, even leaving behind good things. Even when the breaking open was painful, they said they were grateful for who they had become, even though they could never have foreseen the growth and the change within their souls. They were grateful for what their own breaking open had meant to the lives of their families, for often it meant goodness for them. There is no security in the decision to welcome a profound change. Hiccup doesn't know what kind of leader he could possibly be. He doesn't know what's inside him because it hasn't flourished yet. Jesus could not have known what staying his course with firm conviction might result in for himself or others. But it seems as though he knows he is at a threshold in his life and is considering the risk of finding out what's inside the seed of his soul that has been nurtured the past years as a rabbi. The one who loves one's psyche loses it, he says. And psyche here can mean soul or self or life. And the word here for love is about being attached fondly to something. So what he's saying is that those who cling to the moment, those who cling to the life of this moment, may lose or miss who they deeply are, or maybe who they are becoming in their soul. Those who cling to the life of this moment lose the fullness of their life, because then it doesn't unfold. But letting go opens the soul or the life up into something new. Clinging leads to loss, and letting go leads to life. Jesus, like Hiccup, doesn't know what to do. And so he gives it to God. Father, glorify thy name. And God is no help. The voice from heaven says, I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again. Jesus is already all that God could ask for. He already has the self-knowledge and the wisdom to make his decision. Who he is already glorifies God, and God has faith in him. How often have any of us looked to heaven for the answer to a question, just to take the heat off, just to know which way to go? And then it's like there's silence from God. There's no sign, there's no dream, there's no sense of certainty, no gold envelope in the mailbox. Maybe, just maybe, the silence is God saying, I have faith in you. Dear little seed, you have everything you need within you to make this decision, to take this step. Now, Jesus stepped over the threshold. He stayed his course. He spoke his truth. He wouldn't be cowed or driven away into hiding. He didn't cling. And it literally cost his life. Inside the seed of that life was something bigger than he could have possibly imagined. There was a resurrection waiting. There was, in spite of a stumbling humanity, 2,000 words worth of followers, 2,000 years worth of followers, committed to figuring out how to live his teaching. And so his life didn't remain a single grain. It flourished. So what about us? This, dear church, is the season of flourishing. And I believe that God has faith in us. Are we clinging to what we could have been or wish we were? Or are we bearing fruit with each new day, whatever our limitations might be? I look around this room and I know that you know the courage of being a seed. I know that many of you have chosen life, have chosen at times a new and uncharted path, rather than stay in a place of fear or regret or anger. And so perhaps this week in our Lenten journey, you could take a few moments and remember falling into the ground and breaking open and becoming new. Perhaps our spiritual practice this week is to remember that, and to remember that this is the way of the Spirit, and it is the path of wisdom. Perhaps it is also to remember that God has faith in us, and God will be glorified in our faithful living. May we learn to be seeds over and over again, until at last we are one with God. Amen.